All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to this Multnomah County Chair Candidate Forum. Before we begin, our committee would like to take a moment to together to acknowledge the original peoples of this land. Wherever you are on Indigenous peoples' land. As a descendant of settler colonists from Europe, I personally am a guest here in Multnomah County. I'm taking up space for the Indigenous peoples of this land. Acknowledging the peoples of these lands is a beginning. One reason our committee organized this candidate forum is to move toward liberty and justice for all, including Indigenous peoples of these lands who have faced genocide, forced removal from their homelands, and having their lands and other resources exploited or stolen. Indigenous peoples have survived through their resourcefulness and a wealth of other cultural strengths. Today, we celebrate the diversity and wealth of contributions Indigenous peoples have made to our country. This acknowledgement is a start, but it's not an end in itself. Please take a moment to offer your own silent thanks to Indigenous ancestors and their descendants. Well, thank you all for attending tonight's event and participating in the democratic process in this really important way. The event tonight was organized by a committee of Southeast Portland PTAs and neighborhood associations, including Creston Elementary PTA, Cleveland High School PTA, Creston Kenilworth Neighborhood Association, and Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association. My name is Carrie Babin, and I am a board member and the health and safety coordinator for Creston PTA. I will be moderating the event tonight, and I want to acknowledge the Chelsea Powers from the Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association. Chelsea will be our timekeeper tonight. Thank you, Chelsea. And Danny Dawes of Creston Kenilworth Neighborhood Association and Mariah Appolito, the board secretary for Creston PTA, will be monitoring the chat for us. Thank you, guys. So we have with us tonight 4 candidates for the position of county chair: Sharia Mayfield, Commissioner Sharon Meieran, Commissioner Lori Stegman, and Commissioner Jessica Vega Pederson. Thank you all for being here and for choosing to run in this important election. I want to share a quick summary of the role of Multnomah County Chair to provide a little background for the audience before we begin. The chair is the chief executive officer of Multnomah County and elected to a 4-year term on a nonpartisan ballot. The chair oversees and administers all county programs and commissioners. Examples of the programs and departments overseen by the county chair include libraries, mental and behavioral health services, public health, homeless services, shelters, affordable housing, animal services, elections, preschool for all, WIC and SNAP programs, and many others. The chair prepares the executive budget for submission to the board of county commissioners. And the county budget for fiscal year 2022 is $2.8 billion. The chair does not oversee departments headed by separate elected officials, such as the sheriff or the auditor or the DA. So now I will quickly outline the ground rules that were agreed upon by the candidates, and then we can get started. This forum is, as Chelsea mentioned, being recorded, and the recording will be posted on the Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association YouTube channel later this week. So if you know anyone who isn't able to attend but would like to watch the forum, they can do that later. Candidates will have, each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening statements. Once opening statements are concluded, we will move on to the first round of questions. Prior to the forum, we solicited questions from our communities and submitted 10 of those questions to the candidates for prepared responses. Each candidate will respond to 2 of the questions from that list. One was chosen by our committee, and the second was chosen by the candidate themselves. Written answers to all 10 questions will be posted online on the Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association website later this week. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to these questions. From there, we will move on to audience questions. Our chat monitors will take audience questions submitted through the chat function and send them to me. I will pose the questions to the candidates. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to questions in this section. And our hope is to get to at least 4 questions from the floor during this time. My intention as moderator is to ensure equal response time for each of the candidates. Use a random number generator to determine who would begin with their opening statements. And we came up with Commissioner Stegman. So without further ado.
All right, are we ready, Carrie? Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Stegman, and I serve as your vice chair for the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. I'm the only commissioner who has served all 5 of the major cities in the county, including Portland, Gresham, Fairview, Troutdale, and Wood Village, as well as the unincorporated areas for the past 6 years. My district includes 4 school districts, multiple jurisdictions, and both urban and rural communities. Prior to serving as a county commissioner, I served as a Gresham City Councilor and Gresham Redevelopment Commissioner for 6 years and have volunteered on multiple nonprofit boards and committees. And while my 12 years of political experience is invaluable, it is my lived experience that enables me to lead with passion and with purpose. Some of you may have heard of the famous Holt Airlift, where over 3,000 babies were adopted by American families. I was one of those babies. Harry and Bertha Holt were farmers in Cresswell, Oregon, who were inspired to adopt 8 Korean children of their own before they became pioneers in international adoption. In 1960, I flew into the Portland airport in an unheated cargo plane, along with nearly 100 other babies. There were some babies who did not even survive the flight because they were so malnourished. And that is something that weighs on my mind almost every day. And yet here I am, a mother, a successful small business owner, and an elected official. Having grown up in the Rockwood neighborhood of Gresham, one of the most low-income and diverse neighborhoods in the county, I know what it is like to struggle with food and housing insecurity. But because I had access to public assistance at critical times in my life, I was not only able to survive, but I was able to thrive. And while I often think about what could have been, I also feel incredibly blessed to have been given so much. Every loss, every shortcoming, and every disappointment has only made me stronger and more determined to make sure that everyone has the same opportunities in life that I had. And as your next county chair, that is exactly what I will do.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Next, we have Commissioner Meieran.
The old looking for the mute switch. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I am Sharon Meieran. I am the commissioner currently representing District 1, which is all of the county west of the Willamette River, also inner southeast out to Cesar Chavez. It includes Cleveland High School is in the district, and I am also an emergency room doctor and a volunteer with Portland Street Medicine, where I provide healthcare to people living unsheltered outside. I also am I'm a recovering lawyer, and I am the mom of 2 teenagers who have attended Portland public schools. And right now, Multnomah County is in crisis, and all of us see some form of this inhumanity really every day. And whether it's human beings living outside amidst garbage on our streets, or whether it's people experiencing mental health crises who are taken to jails instead of to treatment, acts of horrific violence, methamphetamine use that renders people permanently psychotic, and the story you shared in your questionnaire, actually, which was about a single parent and a child in the school who were given a tent when they needed shelter and were told shelter was not available. This is unconscionable. And we all kind of ask how we've gotten to this point, but more importantly, we ask, what do we do now? And I know we can do so much better. And doing better depends on who is chair. And I really appreciate the description in the beginning of what chair entails, what the county even does. As a sitting commissioner, I have learned that the chair controls the money, the agenda, and the power at the county. And the chair sets the vision. And I have been the only sitting commissioner who has consistently called out the status quo as not doing enough, called for urgency in addressing the humanitarian, public health, and public safety crisis on the streets. And for me, it's not about politics. It's really about public service. I appreciate being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meieran. And we have Commissioner Vega Pederson next.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks everyone from the PTAs and neighborhood associations for having us all here tonight. I'm Jessica Vega Pederson. I use she, her pronouns. When my husband and I got married 16 years ago, we bought our home in East Portland. At the time, I was a technology project manager and my husband had a new small business. Hazelwood was a neighborhood that we could afford and where we knew we could be part of the community. It didn't hurt that there were 3 places to get tamales within walking distance of my house. When we've been in that house ever since, the same house, the same block, but a rapidly changing community. East Portland was once unincorporated county land that has become a diverse, densely populated part of the city. It's an area that is made up of people from all over the world who work hard to better our community, but a lot of times are just working hard to keep their heads above water. I ran my first campaign on sidewalks and on the dangerous speeds people drive through my neighborhood. Community came together to support my first campaign, and together we got sidewalks and a whole lot more for the people of East Portland. I've brought that power building approach to every issue I've tackled, both at the state legislature and on the county commission. In Salem, I championed initiatives to bring paid sick leave to every Oregon worker for retirement security that would ensure that fewer people, particularly women, will face poverty as they age, to raise Oregon's minimum wage and to get coal out of our energy mix. And at Multnomah County, I work to ensure cleaner air and a clear commitment to renewable energy. I've worked with neighborhood associations, small businesses, and school to successfully site new shelters and supportive services in my district. I fought to get better COVID response and resources to our BIPOC community who are most impacted by the pandemic. And I led the fight for preschool for all, an investment in quality early childhood education for our children and our workers that will have generational impact. Right now, we are at an important inflection point. From our housing and houselessness crisis to combating climate change to increasing community safety and addressing systemic racism, we need comprehensive solutions that address the urgency of the issues before us. We need a Multnomah County Chair who is a proven leader in times when we face unprecedented challenges. She should also feel like your advocate no matter who you are or what part of the county you're from. I have the experience, the track record of accomplishment, and the vision to meet this moment and lead Multnomah County in the right direction. I look forward to our conversation this evening, and I hope to earn your support.
Thank you, Commissioner Vega Pederson. And last we have Sharia Mayfield. Thank you.
Thank you so much for organizing this, Carrie and everyone else. And thanks for the people attending Sharia Mayfield here. And just by way of background, for those who don't know me, I'm an employment rights attorney. I work on anti-discrimination cases, really ranging from workers' comp retaliation, racial discrimination in the workplace, sexism, disability status discrimination, wage and hour type discrimination as well. And that's really one of my passions, is to stand up for workers and ensure that there is workplace equity. As some of you may know, back in 2004, my father, Brandon Mayfield, was wrongfully arrested on a faulty fingerprint match connecting him supposedly to the Madrid train bombings, which was the hugest terrorist attack in Spain's modern history. And we were profiled by the FBI on the basis of our religion. We're a Muslim family. I'm half Egyptian. And that really spurred my interest in going into law and fighting against discrimination and government surveillance, which has also been one of my passions. I teach privacy law at Willamette Law, and I have background working for Senator Wyden, where I did national security and intelligence advising. After that, I worked for the Oregon DOJ under the esteemed Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum, who I respect immensely. I did a lot of stuff there, ranging from civil commitment appeals, juvenile dependency, police to certification type appeals, and really any type of civil rights or prison case. And then after that, I went into some criminal defense. I did a little bit of cannabis law, but primarily I moved into employment rights, which, as I said, is what I work in right now. The reason I'm running, as you guys probably know, is we are facing some of the hugest crises in the region that I've seen in my life. I was born in Portland, and I'm very disillusioned by current leadership. And while we have 3 sitting commissioners on this panel right now, I respect them as people, but their leadership has not risen to the occasion, and they just have not delivered the results that the people deserve. And so I'm really throwing myself into this race because we need a lot more critical, urgent action to address the livability crises, the homelessness crisis, and the safety issues that we're facing here. And I think time was called, so thank you so much, and I look forward to the rest of the panel.
Thank you. So we'll move on now to the second, the question section. And the first section of questions will be the prepared question responses. And we'll start with a question that as our committee came up with and are asking each candidate to respond to. I will read the question, but I also was requested that we post the question in the chat so that others can read it as well. And I can do that right now. See, I think. Did that work? Well, I'll work on it after I read the question. Sorry. So the idea for this forum came out of an experience that the Crescent parent community encountered while we were supporting a school family faced with houselessness in the fall of 2021. This parent and child were number 200 on the wait list for shelter space. When they asked where they would sleep while they were waiting for shelter, they were told by the nonprofit managing the homeless shelter and contracted by the county that they could provide a tent for them in the interim. We all know that the housing situation in Multnomah County is desperate, but it was an absolute shock to our community that the county was offering tents to single parents and their children rather than safe shelter for the night. In the end, our school community raised funds to pay for temporary motel shelter until a longer term solution was found. It has been reported that there's a tension between the city and county in the preferred approach to housing policy, with the county favoring a policy of prioritizing long-term permanent housing and the city pushing for short-term housing and shelters. How do you believe that this tension has contributed to the situation where single mothers cannot find temporary shelter in Multnomah County? What will be your approach to working with the city to ensure that every child in Multnomah County has access to a safe bed for the night? And we'll begin with Commissioner Meieran.
Thank you. And I know I have provided a written answer which delves into the structure and the issues between city and county. And I really appreciate this question. And I'm going to talk about this in a different context than what was in my questionnaire to give additional information. And what we were doing was not working long before the pandemic started. And now it's much worse because of how local government has handled the crisis, which has to do with our structure and how things are coordinated. I have been the only sitting commissioner who has consistently called out the humanitarian, public health, and public safety crisis of people living unsheltered outside, and actually has proposed a viable solution that unfortunately was not supported by the chair or fellow commissioners last year. I will be revisiting it again this year. And right now we have some shelter, we have some outreach, we have some of a bunch of different things, but we don't have a system that works. And the reality is, even if we filled all of these things we talk about and we're, touting, we as local government, they are a drop in the bucket, tens or hundreds compared with the scale of need, which is thousands. So my plan, and I have an actual plan, adds 3 components that are key to having a functional system. And those are, number 1, a network of tiny, tiny micro villages. These are not safe risk villages or whatever else. 10 structures that house people with basic amenities, toilet, hygiene, shower and laundry, trash pickup, dispersed throughout the county. They have tiny footprints, and unlike safe rest villages, a city block, they don't require a water, electrical hookup. If you put one tiny site in every neighborhood in the city, that's 1,000 people. We are talking scale. So, and a network of safe parking sites and coordination, which we do not have. So outreach currently doesn't work effectively. We need it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meieran. Commissioner Vega Pederson.
So I wholeheartedly believe that we can create a Multnomah County where every child has access to a safe bed for the night. We have invested in a system where we're going to have a county where every child can attend preschool. So we can also make sure that every child has a home as well. And, I don't think anybody on this panel will disagree that the most important issue facing the county right now is that of housing and houselessness. From East County to downtown Portland, houselessness has never been a more urgent problem. And as county chair, it is going to be my highest priority to work on. To address the question, we're not going to solve our houselessness crisis by pitting shelter and housing against each other. The crisis is going to require a comprehensive approach that focuses on keeping people housed who are so at risk of becoming houseless, helping people be safely off our streets, and ensuring that we have critical support services so that people can be successful in housing. And that requires using every arsenal at our disposal, from rental assistance to rapid rehousing, vouchers to keep people from becoming homeless in the first place. It means expanding our shelter capacity with every single one of those tools, including traditional shelters, pod villages, safe rest, and safe parking sites. And it means scaling up our behavioral health services and permanent supportive housing to keep those who require additional support housed. I want to say that permanent supportive housing is a priority, and we are creating investments in long-term affordable housing at a significant level, but we have to be investing in other tools as well. The county is the one jurisdiction that has opened permanent shelter beds over the last 5 years. I don't think a lot of people realize that. And with the relaxation of COVID restrictions, that number is going to be able to double almost overnight as we lift capacity requirements. I've been personally involved in opening 2 new county shelters just in my district, and we have a safe rest village and a We Shine mini village on the way in my district as well. So we have put thousands of people into housing and into shelter. But we have to do a better job of working together. And I think one of the biggest strengths that I bring to this is my ability to bring people together so we don't have the finger pointing and placing the blame between the city and the county any longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pederson. Ms. Mayfield.
Great, thank you. And respectfully, just to respond to that last point, I don't think we've seen the commissioners coming together to push for solutions. We've only seen a worsening crisis and quite frankly, obstruction of solutions. Over the last 6 years, we've been in a homeless emergency. So this is not a new issue. This is what really highlights the frustration of the constituents, and why I decided to run is we do not feel that our voices are being heard when we say we want urgent action. And over 6 years of an emergency, we now have gone into second place for having the most unsheltered people in the United States after California, as of last year's federal study, a 2021 study. And we just look outside and we see the problem is just getting worse and worse and worse. And so we have commissioners saying, hey, we have solutions, but if you haven't banded together the support of even 3 commissioners to pass the solutions, I feel like we're not confident that that's going to happen. And so where I come in is, I come in to really, again, focusing on the vision of the people who really want to see the livability crisis addressed in an urgent way. And quite frankly, the county's approach, particularly under Chair Kafori, who I think is largely responsible for this, has been permanent housing, almost only permanent housing. And while that's fine, and we need to continue building more housing and creating affordable units, as somebody who actually did construction law and worked in construction law and also has done civil commitment appeals for people who have severe mental health issues, building more units without having emergency action right now is not going to fix the problem. It will take several years. If we're in need of 111,000 units, which is what the current estimates are saying, we have to do something right now immediately. And that means sanctioned camp areas with access to hygiene services as the very first step, as a stepping stone type model. And also creating, as Sharon, Commissioner Meieran was also saying, is we have some of these other options too. So yes, we need shelters, we need tiny homes, we need safe rest villages, RV parks, which I've been saying from the start of my campaign, safe park areas. These are things that could have happened over the last 6 years, and we haven't seen a proliferation of them. So that's what I would be focusing on primarily as chair, is the short-term solutions as we build up more housing. And I think time was called.
Yes, time was called.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I can't actually see. I can't see you in the mix of all this. It's hard because it keeps moving around the screen. So my apologies.
I got a yellow and a red, trying to keep it here so you can see
Thank you. Oh no, I meant the people keep moving. So
it's
sorry.
all good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you. So when we look at the housing continuum, there are 5 main ingredients that we need to look at: emergency shelter, alternative shelter, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, and affordable housing. Each and every one of those elements is critical. But because our systems are so fragmented, there are huge gaps in service, like not enough family shelters, as well as a duplication of efforts. Kind of like when you go to the grocery store, if you don't know what's in your refrigerator, you don't know if you're duplicating. It's critical that we invest not only in the right ingredients, but more significantly in the appropriate amounts of those ingredients. That's why, as your next chair, I will work collaboratively to create an ecosystem to solve this crisis. I've been a long time of my father's house, a homeless family shelter in Gresham that has been serving families since 2001 with an 80% success of housing families. They have the recipe to solve homelessness for families, and I look forward to adopting that approach at the county. As a small business owner and a public servant, I understand the intersectionality of sound, pragmatic business principles and how to apply them within the bureaucracy of government. It's imperative that we employ sound financial practices when implementing policy. So let's do the math. We can choose to overinvest in one form of housing, like emergency shelter, that can cost $17,000 to $40,000 a year per person. Or we could invest our limited funds across the board that would include rapid rehousing and master leases that are only one-time costs and are 50 to 75% less than shelter. And by doing that, we are actually providing housing, we're actually solving the housing crisis. Master leases are amazing because many of those individuals who have a criminal justice background or parental history, those would enable those folks to receive housing.
Thank you. So the next section is going to be questions from that the committee submitted to the candidates to choose from. And we're going to start with Commissioner Vega Pederson. I will copy and paste the question that she had chosen to respond to in the chat, and then I will also read it here. I think I got this figured out now. Okay, so the question for Commissioner Vega Pederson is, Multnomah County residents and small business owners have become regular victims of crimes such as car theft, vandalism, break-ins, and petty theft. What would be your approach as chair to addressing the issue of crime in Multnomah County?
So, the statistics are that in the past 2 years, the city of Portland, Multnomah County has seen a startling increase in crime, particularly in gun violence. I will say that trend is not true in East Portland, where I live, and in areas of outer Southeast. Crime rates have actually been going up for a while now, and they follow, they have to do with like poverty rates as well. What has been happened though since the pandemic, we have seen that sharp increase all over the county. And as a commissioner, I've invested in both immediate and long-term solutions to this crisis. In this last budget cycle, I passed an amendment to fund community-based organizations who provide mentorship, intervention, after-school programs, and other services proven to reduce crime and prevent violence. As state representative, I was really proud to have fought for requiring background checks for firearm transfers. We have to redouble our investments in gun violence intervention and mentorship. We have to also, as a county, recognize our part in the larger community safety and criminal justice system. We have the Sheriff's Department that works in unincorporated areas in some of the smaller towns in East County who work in partnership to provide law enforcement, but we don't manage the Portland Police. What we do at the county, though, is we provide the budget for both the Sheriff's Department and for our District Attorney's Office. And we need to make sure that we are funding our District Attorney's Office at a level where they are able to have the staffing to be able to prosecute people who have committed these crimes of car theft, vandalism, break-ins, petty theft, as well as other more serious felonies. We have to ensure that the district attorney has the resources needed to investigate and prosecute gun crimes and other crimes that have been such an impact in our community in the last few years. As county chair, I will work closely with all of our partners in public safety and our justice systems, including our internal county departments like parole and probation through our Department of Community Justice, to direct those resources to combat crime and gun violence in the areas most impacted it. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you, Commissioner Vega Pederson. Next is Sharia Mayfield. I'm going to copy the question here. The question is, the position of county commissioner and county chair, more specifically, can be seen as a stepping stone in a political career. This can lead to office holders choosing strategic, politically wise decisions over making difficult, sometimes unpopular decisions. What does success in this position look like for you?
Great. So I push for a 5-step plan, a livability plan that would give people results they can actually see in the short term. And so success to me means giving people the relief they've been asking for, giving them the results that actually are visible and progress that can actually be seen in a short period of time. So number one, that means addressing the mental health and drug addiction issue on our streets, which really is the elephant in the room right now. We're not going to fix the housing crisis or the poverty crisis or the employment type issues that we have until we start addressing people's mental health and drug addiction issues. And so that really means getting people into treatment voluntarily, ideally, by expanding dual diagnosis centers. I'm encouraged by the center that's opening downtown, but we need probably a dozen of those to meet the scale of the emergency that we're in right now. And we also need to expand programs like Project Respond that actually link up clinicians with law enforcement to respond to mental health crises and get people into involuntary treatment if they need it so they can be rehabilitated. Separately from that, we really need to start cleaning up the streets. The garbage, the litter is causing people to be on edge. It's causing distress. It's causing us to feel uncomfortable. And we need to address the mental health of just the regular constituents who drive down the road and feel like this doesn't look like a beautiful, safe county for me. I don't feel comfortable walking around certain areas, especially as a petite woman. There are areas I won't walk in, and that I'm not able to freely access parts of the county feeling safe. Old Town, Chinatown being an example is just not okay. So success really means centering our policy on what the majority want, not stakeholders, not even the nonprofits, but what the majority truly want. And I don't think that has happened. I want to respond to the people who have said, please, we are desperate for change. We are desperate for short-term solutions. We are desperate for addressing these livability issues for our kids, for the school children that are out there with huge camps right next to their schools, with drug paraphernalia in the open, with the gun violence on the rise. And really, I think a lot of it comes down to the meth addiction crisis we're dealing with, which has not been dealt with. And I would prioritize dealing with that as well.
Thank you. Next, it was Commissioner Stegman. The question, the same one was addressed earlier, but the question I'll read again. Multnomah County is building, Multnomah County residents and small business owners have become regular victims of crimes such as car theft, vandalism, break-ins, and petty theft. What would be your approach as chair to addressing the issue of crime in Multnomah County?
Thank you, Carrie. So to reduce crime, we have to analyze what the drivers of crime are. Recently, I had the opportunity to do with our Multnomah County Sheriff's Office and was the impact that fentanyl and meth are having on our community. Tragically, last month, we lost 2 youths to overdose who thought they were taking oxycodone and Percocet, but they were laced with fentanyl. According to the Families Against Fentanyl, fentanyl poisoning is the number one cause of death among Americans 18 to 45, surpassing COVID-19, suicide, and car accidents. In its purest form, fentanyl is the size of a grain of salt, and that amount can kill you. Because of its small size and potency, it is more easily transported and smuggled, and it is extremely profitable. The reality is that often drugs and crime go hand in hand. And I am told that fentanyl and the meth crises are fueling crimes like car and catalytic converter thefts, break-ins, and other property crimes. We need to further analyze the relationship between drug use, people who are experiencing homelessness, and the unprecedented increase of violence. While I support ballot measure 110, the measure recently passed to decriminalize drugs and fund more services, I worry about the unintentional consequences that our community is experiencing. We don't yet have an intervention system, and we don't have a recovery-oriented system of care. Order of operation is important. The model that I want to explore is Portugal's. They treat possession or use of any drug as a health issue, not a crime, but drug dealers are still jailed. If you have less than a 10-day supply, you get a mandatory medical treatment. They have found that this approach is cheaper than incarceration, and their drug-induced death rate has plummeted to 5 times lower than the European average. Also, in our upcoming budget, I will advocate for the continued funding of our mobile gun violence behavioral health team. This response team includes mental health clinicians and people with lived experience who provide gun and violence support at violent scenes.
Thank you. Next question is for Commissioner Meieran, and we'll copy and paste it into the chat. The question is, Multnomah County is building an expansive behavioral health resource center in downtown Portland. What do you see as the barriers to accessing resources at the center to residents who live in East Multnomah County? What is your plan for helping overcome those obstacles so that more residents can be served by the new resource center?
Thank you. So as an ER doctor and a longstanding mental health advocate, this is an issue that's been nearest and dearest to my heart. I've been involved in the Behavioral Health Resource Center from the beginning, and am very excited about the opportunity for respite, access to services, mental health, shelter, and bridge housing for people coming out of long-term institutions. I have always said we need at least one of these in each quadrant in the city and in East County. At the very least, we need satellite options in satellite availability in all of our different sectors of the county. And that's something very, very important that I would pursue as county commissioner and have this, as county chair, and have the support of a lot of the behavioral health folks in our county. And so I would expand that. At the very least, I would ensure transportation to the downtown center, but that center is not a treatment center. And I think there may be some misunderstanding. I'm also very involved in what's called the Behavioral Health Emergency Coordination Network, or Beacon. And that involves a collaborative approach from all over the county, health, criminal legal system, public safety system, and others. And that is an opportunity for triage. Right now, people have nowhere to go but jails and the ERs. This is a triage center where people can be stabilized. And then if they're in a behavioral health crisis, they can be sort of take the time to figure out what they need and connect them to the right services, so that actually they get onto a better trajectory, which is what we so desperately need. There's so much more to this. I could talk about, and I won't here, but I could. So please contact me with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meieran. So now we will go to questions from the floor, and I will start off with a question submitted by one of our committee members. Sorry, I just grab that question. And everyone will have 1 minute to respond to the following questions. I've lost it. Okay, here we go. In recent years, many homeless camps have appeared on public school property, sidewalks adjacent to school property, and on student walk bike routes to school. As a result, students have been exposed to drug paraphernalia and abuse, harassment, and a general lack of feeling safe on their school grounds and commute. Some PTA groups have advocated for a city policy that would prohibit homeless camps and vehicle camping within 1,000 feet of school property. Do you support such a policy? If the city were to adopt this policy, what tools does the county have at its disposal that could support this policy? And we'll hear from Ms. Mayfield first.
Yes, 100%. And another problem with placing large camps or tiny homes or any sort of supportive services right next to schools is it's very hard to screen who those people are. And some of them are actually sex offenders, as many of you may know. So we need to make sure we have a named head count of who are in these areas and ensuring that we know who each person is, and also not putting them right next to schools. I just went to Harriet Tubman Middle School and saw a huge encampment within feet of the field back there. And I even did a video on it showing the conditions, which were just deplorable. And to have drug paraphernalia right there next to a school, one of the parents reached out to me and said his son goes there and that it wasn't okay. And so this is a failure that we're seeing. I do push for these sanctioned camp areas with services. I do push for rest villages. I really am pushing for any alternative solution right now that can be scaled quickly and largely to address the crisis. But yes, we don't need to be putting them next to schools. And quite frankly, I actually have looked at possibly up to 60 potential sites, and many of them are not next to the school. We could even purchase sites. I mean, we look at places like the Kmart in Gresham that has been abandoned and all these other areas, and we have to start looking at different areas that don't endanger school children.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman?
Yes, I do support. I think that our children need to be kept safe and away from drug paraphernalia. The tools that the county could bring, as you mentioned, that is city under the city's purview to enforce something like that. But what we can do is we can work alongside the city so that when the displacement of those camps occur, that we are able to connect those people to resources. Obviously, we can provide behavioral health resources. And I think we also, has been mentioned, we have to talk civil commitment. Again, it goes back to drug use, that there are some drugs that have created psychosis, and that there are more and more individuals in that situation who are not capable of caring for themselves.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Commissioner Meieran.
I'm embarrassed to ask this question, but could you just repeat the question?
Yes, sorry, I had some issues with, I wasn't able to paste it because I'm getting them from the chat. And anyway, there was a little bit of technical difficulty, so I didn't have it anyway, but I can definitely reread it. The question is, I'll skip maybe the sort of intro and just get to the heart of it, which is, would you support a city policy that would prohibiting homeless camps and vehicle camping within 1,000 feet of school property? And if you do support that, what tools does the county have that could help to support the city in that?
Thank you. And I think that both aspects of the question are great. And I actually visited Vancouver, where they have a really effective model. They have effective models of two things. One is one of these sort of small village sites, which is the kind of thing I've been pushing for. And they have a 1,000-foot no camping policy outside of the village, and also safe parking site, which I've also pushed for a network of safe parking sites throughout the county. And they also have the 1,000-foot rule. And the thing that makes that function there is that they have an exceptional relationship with law enforcement, and that they have, and it's with their houseless services providers and their peer networks all together. And what makes this difficult from the standpoint at the county is the city here is we need to have more conversation about this.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega Pederson.
Thanks. And before I respond, I just want to just say there's some folks on the chat who are direct messaging me and bad mouthing other candidates on the forum. And so I just want to ask people like publicly to stop doing that. It's not very respectful to other candidates. And I don't think that's the intention that the organizers had for this kind of forum at all. So just wanted to put that out there. Okay, so to get back to the question at hand, though, yeah, we have some these buffers around schools for a lot of different reasons, right? Where sex offenders can live, where a marijuana shop can be located. I think it makes sense to have this kind of buffer around schools as well. And and as Commissioner Stegman mentioned, this is something that the enforcement of that within the city limits of Portland is something that's done by the city. And so we've seen, some new things coming out of the mayor's office, such as not allowing camping on dangerous streets and intersections, which I think is also a good idea when people are dying there. That being said, though, I think there has to be better coordination between the city and the county when those kinds of announcements are made, so that the county, through our Joint Office of Homeless Services, through our Department of Human Services, can be finding places for people to go, setting aside shelter beds, so that when those things are happening, we're prepared, so that we're not just sweeping and moving people from place to place. We actually have places to people to go. So as county chair, that is absolutely something that we'll be pushing for and working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vega Pederson. Next question from the chat, I'll pull over. I think I've got this figured out so I can get it. We have lots of questions about houseless services, and so we will have a few of those probably. This question is, we need more 24/7 shelters like Arbor Lodge. Is there a plan to expand current shelter offerings to this model and or build more 24/7 shelters? There's high demand for this model. And we'll start with Commissioner Stegman.
So the Behavioral Health Resource Center is going to be opening this year. That will also be a day shelter as well as transitional housing. The district that I represent, the plan, or what I envision, is that we would have similar shelters like this throughout the Multnomah County. So absolutely, having 24/7 shelters where people have a day center, I think is absolutely critical. We all know that our libraries are often a de facto day center, and that is something that we really need to address.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Commissioner Meieran.
Thank you. So we absolutely, as I've mentioned before, I think we need an ecosystem with a variety of options to meet a variety of people's needs. And the other key is that it be at scale. And I've said we talk tens to hundreds when we need to be talking thousands. And in order to be able to allocate our resources effectively in this kind of a system, we need to know what the scale of need even is. And we don't have any of that data. And I have called that out literally for years. And from the Joint Office of Homelessness, do not get the responses that we need. And it has not been followed up. One of my priorities as chair will be to get real data, what people need, so we can address our need and allocate limited resources most effectively. And a point in time count, when that comes out, listen to it with a grain of salt. It is notoriously inaccurate. It is an undercount. And what we actually need is what's called the by name count, which gets to who people are, what they need, where they are, so we can start doing the work to meet what's really needed out there. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega Pederson.
Thanks. So yeah, so we definitely need to be expanding our offerings around safe places for people to access shelter, where they can access things that are really basic human rights, like a place to go to the bathroom, access to fresh water, those kinds of things. We are looking at all of the shelters except for emergency shelters that we've been investing in are going to be the 24/7 shelters. It is, I know that there are and we will continue to do this in keeping the balance of shelters where people can go, where they are, where it's sanctioned to go, and making sure that we are having outreach to those folks so that they're not just there in the shelters. I do, and like I said, there's a lot of alternative shelter models that people are doing, even through their own private means without public investment, that are showing really good outcomes and community buy-in, like the We Sign shelters that are going out here in my district. So I believe that we need to continue to invest in those, and we need to get neighborhoods to buy into those. We have a women's shelter that we want to cite, but we're actually still getting pushback from community members, and so we need to be working together to get those cited as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield.
Well, some good news. I think there's something we unanimously agree on, which is that these types of shelters are good to expand. So I completely agree. We need more of these 24/7 type shelters. I mean, some of the shelters that you look at, you have to be out of there by 7:30, which is really early in the morning. And so that can be disruptive. And so, yes, we need to expand those, and we need to make sure that we have varied options as well. So shelters, of course, are fine, and we need those low, high barrier, but actually a lot of street campers and unsheltered folks, they've said they don't want to go to shelters. And so that's why, although we need more of these 24/7 type shelters, we should be looking into sanctioned camp areas for those who actually want to camp and just want laundry services and sanitation services, just to feel clean again and have their own items and feel like they have privacy. And that's okay. Just work with the people on the scale that they want. And I think we can do that with RV parks, safe parks, more shelters, allowing that single mother to have that bed, because guess what? The person who's using the shelter and wants the sanctioned camp is now taking a bed from the single mother who actually only wants the shelter bed. So let's do it all. Let's have varied options, and then work with the homeless to give them those varied options.
Thank you. The next question from the chat, I think I have it ready to.
Carrie, you've muted yourself.
I knew that was going to happen at one point. Okay, sorry. How would you work with the sheriff, the district attorney, and the behavioral health department to address the needs of people charged with non-violent misdemeanor crimes to remain in the community rather than being sent to Oregon State Hospital? And we'll begin with Commissioner Meieran.
Thank you. This is something very near to and dear to my heart that I have been working deeply in for years and years. I have advocated with the former director of the Oregon State Hospital, who believes that spending our resources, this is a state issue. And so I would advocate working on this, and in the role of chair could do so even more effectively, is that the state hospital costs hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for people to go who have minor offenses due to their mental health issues. They are sent to a state hospital, which costs $800 a day to stay there. One of the biggest uses of our general fund dollars at the state level. And they're there for an average of 70 days because they can't aid and assist in their own defense in jail. They're sent back to the county. They can aid and assist. We need local community places where people can be restored to their competency. So much cheaper, so much better outcomes, more effective.
Okay,
thank you. There's
all
a
right,
lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega Pederson.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Commissioner Meieran's right. Like a lot of this is a state issue. When there was a movement made to really close down a lot of larger congregate settings for people with behavioral health issues, the investment was supposed to be made into community-based solutions for those folks. And we've switched to that model where we don't have, except for the Oregon State Hospital, we really don't have those bigger ones, and we have more resources in the community, but the funding from the state has not followed that directive. And so what we end up with is people who we're in this like vicious cycle of people being sent to the hospital, costing the state money, cycling causing problems with our justice system and access to justice. So we need to advocate, and as county chair, I will advocate at the state level to get those resources into the community so people can stay at less expense and better outcomes within our local community here in Multnomah County to receive the services that they need. I think this is a high priority from our behavioral health department team as well, and so I'm happy to work on.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield.
Again, my emphasis is more on prevention. An ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. So really expanding these dual diagnosis centers to get people treatment before they start committing crimes is the #1 thing we need to do. Make it voluntary and make it cheap or free and accessible and widespread throughout the entire county, at least in each district, but ideally even more than that. We should have 2, 3 in each district. And then I will say this, if you are committing crimes, even nonviolent ones, those can be incredibly disruptive and harmful to neighbors, for working class people. I've had people steal stuff from me. There's car break-ins where people can't get to work anymore. We can't minimize the harmful effects of nonviolent crimes. Those folks either do need to go into treatment of some sort, whether it's civil commitment or the hospital or jail. And, again, we need to prevent it, but once it happens, there has to be consequences, and it's not fair to everyone else who feels like we're living in a lawless society right now, facing huge increases in theft, 40-time increase in catalytic converter thefts last year from, I think, 2019 to 2020 or so. There was a gigantic increase in those. And I don't think leadership realizes how harmful nonviolent crimes can truly be.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you. So we have a program called the LEAD program. It stands for Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. It's a good program, but the problem is that it's kind of optional. But I think that we need a program so that when people are actually then they have an option to choose. We are putting together a system called the Behavioral Health Emergency Coordination Network that will essentially be a 24/7 drop-off site for first responders. But the problem is that we need to build out the system, because right now our law enforcement partners, even if they pick somebody up for a behavioral health crisis or a drug-induced psychosis, there's no place to take them. So it's really important that we build out those systems, like more detox centers, and we know that we're dead last in treatment centers, and we need more mental health services. So again, building that out like we're doing with the Behavioral Health Resource Center in downtown Portland, and really expanding that model throughout the county is going to be absolutely critical. And also just providing mental health services through our Sun School system. We serve with Reynolds High School. I advocated to get a school-based health center that can provide mental health.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Our next question is on social services, and I will paste it in the chat here. The question is, although Multnomah County provides disability services to the public, people with intellectual disabilities continue to be excluded from getting jobs with the county because they do not meet all of the qualifications in a job description. What changes would you make to ensure that those with intellectual disabilities have better access to jobs through the county? Would you use your leadership as chair to adopt inclusive practices like writing more equitable job descriptions that are geared toward a person with an intellectual disability, as OHSU has done, and empowering managers to customize a job description for a person in their department? And we'll begin with Commissioner Vega Pederson.
Thanks. So I actually love this question. I saw it in the chat a little bit ago. I think this is such a great question, and it's absolutely something that the county has to do a better job of doing. We have employment resource groups at the county, and there is one called IDEA, Including Disability and Equity and Access. It's a group of employees with intellectual and disabilities who and other kinds of disabilities that really help advise on what we can be doing better as a county. And that includes everything from like your email size to how we have descriptions in our pictures. And I think making sure that we are making the jobs that we have at Multnomah County as accessible as possible is something that we need to invest in. So I would love to incorporate what OHSU has done in terms of making job descriptions themselves more accessible, as well as holding us accountable for making sure that we're supporting new hires and employees so that they can be successful in the workplace in getting their the accommodations that they need to do so. And and I think that is all. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield.
This is my bread and butter. This is what I do for a living, as I work on discrimination cases, including those with disabilities. And so absolutely, I will always be pushing for inclusion and equity, not just of BIPOC people, which of course is important, but people sometimes forget about those with disabilities. And that does mean making sure that we have accessible job descriptions. And if you realize that there is a description that is not, or it's excluded to you, please consult with a civil rights or employment rights attorney, because you do have rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act to ask for accommodations, reasonable accommodations, which you would be surprised. There are almost always ways to find solutions to include you, regardless of your intellectual disabilities, whether you have autism, Asperger's, ADHD. I was diagnosed with ADHD as a child. And so you need to know that you have options and that it's not just a steamroll over you and you don't have a choice. So please reach out to those lawyers, but also as a lawyer who has done this as chair, I would 100% prioritize that and make that something that we can address and make more accessible.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. And I just want to just really quickly again, sort of reiterate what Commissioner Vega Pederson had said. I've gotten a message about some sort of bad actors in the chat, and I really would appreciate if your intention isn't just to be here and participate nicely in our democratic process, that you leave their forum. Thank you. Next, Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Carrie. So one of the things that I will do as the next chair is create an economic development and workforce stability department that will get at the heart of this question, is to help and assist more people have family wage jobs. We already do contract like with Relay, which is a company that provides janitorial services, as well as I work with another company called Exceed Enterprises that works with people with developmental disabilities. And so I think that the county can serve as a clearinghouse to connect people to jobs. And whether those jobs could be internally with the county, absolutely. But they could also be, we could be a clearinghouse to get people jobs in the broader community, working with chambers of commerce, as well as working with the unions, allowing people to go through the trades. I sponsored something called the Construction Diversity Equity Fund, where 1% of all capital funds go to fund women and people of color for apprenticeship.
Thank you. Commissioner Meieran.
Thank you. I really appreciate this question and would elevate a couple of things that others have spoken about already. One is the employee resource groups. The idea is employee resource group I have attended multiple times and spoken directly with the folks who are involved in that, who have raised issues with me that I have pursued at the county that have not been implemented within the current leadership and administration. And this would be a huge priority for me. I am the board liaison to the Disability Services Advisory Council. And again, I listen to people directly, which is so essential. And then I take what people tell me and I advance that and base policies that I pursue on what people who are most impacted share with me and based on their experiences. And I've seen things not necessarily going forward currently, huge priority for me as chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Meieran. Our next question, sorry, I'm just hoping I think everyone had a chance to answer that question, right? Okay, sorry, I'm getting a little bit confused myself. Next question is about behavioral health services. Our state ranks 49th in delivering mental health and substance abuse treatment to its residents. How would each of you as county chair address the crisis and get those who need treatment the help that they need? And begin with Ms. Mayfield.
As I stated before, I would be focusing on expanding the dual diagnosis centers where you can get treatment for mental health and drug addiction at the same time, and making it, I've said this, as easy as fast food. People who are in mental health crisis cannot be jumping through hoops and scheduling barriers. We should make it super easy, walk in, simple. These people are struggling, and really, I think that's at the root of our crisis, the crises that we're having right now. Additionally to that, we need to expand Project Respond, of course, Portland Street Response, which I definitely support, but we also need teeth, and Project Respond does that at the county level by linking up those clinicians who make the assessment about whether somebody needs treatment, and then the law enforcement officer who has been trained to deal with these crises then helps in the transport, the detention, and then takes them to the hospital where they're evaluated. They can stabilize for a few days, and then you can have a civil commitment proceeding if needed. Ideally, though, we would be helping these people voluntarily, and not just the homeless people on the streets, everybody. The mental health crisis here does not just affect people on the streets. Gen Z is now the loneliest generation, probably because of the pandemic. And the elderly are also very lonely and experiencing mental health issues and need to have that accessible treatment too.
Thanks. Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you for the question. So I want to create something similar to the Portland Street Response, but that it would be with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. And then right now we know that people, even if first responders have, can pick someone up that is suffering from a crisis, there is no place to take them. So by creating the resource center similar to that, as well as the 24/7 response center that would be a drop-off site for first responders, that's what we have to do, is that would allow people to be triaged and then be receive the appropriate services, whether that's mental health or drug and alcohol services. So that is our job, is to connect people to services through those points of service.
Thank you. Commissioner Meieran.
Thanks for this question. And this is so huge. We're, and again, as a longstanding behavioral health advocate at the state, federal, and local levels, this is something we need to address. And we are 49th because our systems don't function effectively. People who are making decisions at the political level don't understand the systems. And for example, even just talking here this evening and coordinating, we need a no wrong door policy. We need our youth and elders, as Sharia has mentioned, we need to be focusing on them. And in turn, we need to coordinate our outreach services, because we have about 15 different outreach services right now, more than Project Respond, more than Portland Street Response, more than another. And the problem is no one knows what the others are doing. So I'm working with Commissioner Maps right now at the city level to coordinate what we do have so that we have a functional system to meet the needs of people in crisis. And then I'm also deeply involved in Beacon, which Commissioner Stegman's talking about. So it's not just a drop off, but it is a resource to be able to triage people, get them the services they need, and change the trajectory.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega Pederson.
Thank you. Okay, this is one where I know I'm going to run out of time too. This is such a huge issue. We talked about how Oregon ranks dead last when it comes to rates of mental illness compared to the access of care. We're second in the nation when it comes to rates of substance abuse, and among last when it comes to access of care. And we have untreated mental illness and substance abuse, which is too often associated with chronic homelessness, and we rank 5th there. So we have to do more to bolster the effectiveness of our system, including how people are having a primary point of entry when people seek help for themselves or for others. We have to increase the resources and assistance that's available for those who contact a crisis line, where they are reaching out to our Multnomah County departments through the police, through Portland Street Response, right? We have to have a better way of getting people successfully into the system. They have to be able to transfer people directly into our mental health crisis treatment services so that there is no wrong door when people are needing access to mental health. We also have to be boosting our mental health care systems to meet the needs of the whole person, which includes the physical health. See, I knew I was going to run out of time. So anyway, I would suggest people look at my website for more information on all of these ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one more question. I will paste that into the chat here, and then we'll move on to closing statements. So the question is, would you support shelters or facilities with safe injection areas? And would those shelters or facilities be separate and distinct from those for non-IV drug users? And we'll begin with Commissioner Stegman.
I do support harm reduction models, absolutely. A lot of times that's how you build trust, and a lot of people do not trust systems and providers. We certainly non-IV drug users. I'll leave that up to the medical professionals to decide whether or not. But absolutely, I think having safe injection sites is a harm reduction model that we should adopt.
Thank you. Commissioner Meieran.
Thank you. And I love this. I have been a champion for harm reduction models, and as a medical provider and someone who has seen what happens to people when they do not have access to safe injection, to clean needles, to horrific things. I believe this is clearly a best practice. It is proven in the literature that it saves money, it saves lives, and that is the direction we should be going. The question, and I literally just yesterday or the day before was having a conversation with a colleague who is an addictions expert, who says clearly we need to do this. And the political situation, where people are at is, if they're not ready to go there, we need to dig deeper and say why, and have that conversation, because clearly it is the right policy. Like I said, it saves lives, saves money. So yeah, I support the concept.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega Pederson.
Thank you. Yeah, I think even though we're running against each other, I think you're going to find we're going to have a lot of common ground, especially on this answer. I know I've worked with each of these commissioners on the board to get more harm reduction services, including investing in needle exchange sites out in East County when they were being threatened to have budget cuts, and getting more places to drop off sharps so that they weren't going to be as many in many places around parks. And I think safe injection sites or shelters or facilities is actually, a part of that continuum that we haven't invested in very much in this country. I think there are models in places like Vancouver, British Columbia, where they have been very successful, and San Francisco is now looking, is doing work around this model too. So I think this can be a part of the work that we're doing here as we're addressing the crisis of addiction on our streets, to have solutions and a place for people to go. I think there's going to be, there would need to be a lot of work to see exactly how that would function, what it would look like. But this is, again, on that continuum of compassionate care, of getting people to be in a safer, stable place where they can then begin hopefully getting on the path to recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Mayfield.
No, I don't support it. I think it's immoral and wrong to enable people to continue in that direction, and I don't think it's safe. I understand the statistics that show that mortality is reduced, and I'm aware of that, but I think having the permissive drug culture is and enabling that type of culture is not the solution. I think the solution, again, has to come from really heightened prevention measures. So addressing the root causes of drug addiction in the first place, and not using this sort of Band-Aid to let people get high under supervision, inject themselves, this to me, it just does not sit morally well with me. I'm open to be convinced otherwise. And again, not just focusing on money, but focusing on potential effects to immune system, long-term effects. This is something that I would not support without a massive amount of studies, and also just recognizing that it's still not legal to be doing this. So we would have to change our entire legal structure to accommodate this sort of safe injection site. No, I don't support it. No.
Thank you. And I just got a message that maybe given the speedy answers on that last question, we could squeeze one more answer in time, if that's okay with everyone. So one more question.
While Carrie pulls up the questions, I want to thank the candidates for sticking with our timers because you're letting us get more questions in.
All right, so the question is, are there any improvements that you would promote regarding services for people coming out of prison and jail, or anything about healthcare, safety, or opportunities or for individuals in our jails? And sorry, we'll begin with Commissioner Meieran.
The short answer is yes. There are so many opportunities when we have people in our jails to address a lot of the issues that we've talked about here today. We as a board took a jail tour just last week, I think. I don't even know time anymore. But and we heard some programs that were beginning around getting people into substance use treatment, getting mental health services, getting employment skills training and employment services. These are the kinds of things that can be game changers, and that we need to be able to transition people in a way that we don't start all this stuff and then, oh, you're done here. We need to, just boot you out. We need the connections. And that's where we have an opportunity as a county to make a difference, because we have the clinic system, we have mental health, we have all of the different services people need. And the key is that intersectionality. So we need to put it together. And as chair, that would be a huge priority of mine.
Thank you. Commissioner Vega Pederson.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were all on that jail tour on Friday. I think we all were very encouraged by what they have in mind in terms of helping connect people while they're in our custody to get connected to health supports, to addiction treatment. I do think that we have to do a better job in working with our Department of Community Justice, who deals with parole and probation, to making sure that we're continuing to have those services as people are transitioning out of prison and out of jail and under our supervision, to have the connections to things like housing, things like workforce supports, things like healthcare and health insurance, right? And I think this is one of the reasons, or one of the ways that we can do this, is by doing better partnerships with private employers who are actually, who have the opportunity to provide stable employment, a stable paycheck to folks who are coming out of jail and prison. For this, I've been, one of my supporters is Alonda Simpson, who is a small business owner who is actually having people who are formerly incarcerated working at his facility. And I think those kinds of programs should be expanded, and those are things that we should be supporting and investing in.
Thank you. Ms. Mayfield.
I think I might be the only candidate here who has actually worked on prison cases, represented inmates, and even met with them after they've been released, including helping release 3 prisoners who were unlawfully held past their release date. And so what you see is when these people come out, particularly from prison, which is even worse because they've been in there for a long time, as opposed to jail, which is for misdemeanors, is you don't have the same sort of wraparound services. They're thrown out, they're on post-prison supervision, and then they don't really know how to adjust back into society. And so one of the most important things to me is ensuring mental health services once they're released, and really following up with that. In my ideal world, I think it should be a condition of PPS for everybody, but post-prison supervision. But having that mental health service for free, easy, every single week, or however often you need it, so that you can adjust back to the conditions of society, is super important. And actually, I agree with Jessica Vega Pederson on improving workplace opportunities and work opportunities once you're released, because they do face disadvantages due to their criminal backgrounds. And so encouraging recruitment of those sorts of people who actually really do need their earning potential once they're released. Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman.
Yes, this is absolutely critical, and I have a plan. I will create an Office of Reentry Services. All too often, we release people directly into homelessness. But so if we can better provide for housing, job and career training, and access to family wage jobs, that will go a long ways to reduce recidivism. I also want to apply those same principles to our youth that are aging out of the foster care system, other organizations that we've contracted with that help people transition out of prison or jail is like Women First, who does a phenomenal job of teaching individuals everything from personal finance to mental health, and really being able to take care of those women as they re-enter. So treatment readiness is another program that's really important that we actually have in our jails. And a lot of times that people need sometimes an intervention to get them on the right track. And sometimes jail or prison is that intervention. And while they're there, we can help them recover.
Thank you. Thank you all for being so willing to answer these questions on the spot. And we are at the time where we need to move on to closing statements. And we'll begin with, each candidate has 2 minutes for closing statements as a reminder. And we will begin with Commissioner Vega Pederson.
Thanks. Well, first I want to thank my fellow candidates for their time and energy here tonight. For each of us is here today because we care about this county and the people who live here. But what we also know is that Multnomah County needs strong and bold leadership today by someone who has a track record of actually getting stuff done. We need a leader who understands the challenges that our county faces, who sees a path forward, and who is able to weave together a coalition to meet the moment and to create the changes that we actually need. We need more than ideas, we need action and proven results. And that's exactly why I'm running for county chair, because it's what I've been doing here in our community for the past 16 years. I have never done this alone. My leadership always starts with a broad table that includes those communities that are impacted most by the issues at hand. And in the next 4 years, Multnomah County needs to meet its challenges using proven collaborative leadership. We have challenges of the size and complexity that absolutely require it. We're also facing false narratives and shouting from the sidelines from those who say our problems are so big that they can't be solved, or who present solutions through fear, through vitriol, and through division. And to those naysayers, I can only say division has never solved a single problem, and it's certainly not going to solve the challenges we have before us. Demonizing people struggling with houselessness is not going to get them off the street, and harassing our community won't make it safer. And second, these naysayers underestimate the power of our ability to come together and get things done. I don't. That is why I am here. As a Latina, as a mother, as an East Portland resident, I also have the life experience to lead with compassion, to bring more voices to the table. I have proven that I can get big, audacious things done, and I have a huge group of people who are with me in this fight. I have the broadest support among organizations and community leaders so far in this race, including the employees of Multnomah County of Ask Me Local 88, UFCW, Portland Firefighters, Apano Latino Network, Oregon League of Conservation Voters, Portland Association of Teachers, Oregon Working Families Party, the Pacific Northwest Labor Council, Pro-Choice Oregon, Secretary of State Shemia Fagan, City Commissioner Carmen Rumio, and so many others who are joining me. And today I ask for your support in helping me win this race. And you can learn more about me at jessicavegapederson.com, and I'll put that in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vega Pederson. Ms. Mayfield.
I would encourage everyone attending to critically look at the candidates running. And again, I respect my colleagues and the candidates running against me, but just to be honest, what we have right now is completely unacceptable. And I think it's a horror what we're facing on the streets. And a lot of people have been sounding the alarm for years now. And so we've been wanting these solutions, and we hear, hey, we're going to deal with this. And I've looked at previous statements from all of the commissioners running against me saying they're going to prioritize these issues, and yet the problems just keep getting worse. So I'm not confident that we have the right vision. I think we have the right intentions. Everybody here in the room, I believe and trust, has the right intentions, but the vision is not there, and the chair sets that vision. And we have to have a vision that centers, again, the majority. And that's what I'm doing. I'm channeling the frustration of the majority. And maybe that makes me a thorn in my candidate's side, but I'm doing it because we have not been heard. I'm a constituent as well. I'm not a politician. I'm not a commissioner. I am a constituent. And I feel like I haven't been heard. I feel like my frustrations have not been addressed. And so I'm running for rapid action solutions, common sense solutions. I do want to work together, but I also want you to understand that I'm in this because there's a lot of people who feel that their frustrations are not being addressed. And as chair, I would center them. I would try to work with to create solutions that help both the houseless and the housed folks, that make us safer. I've already had somebody try to break into my home once I moved to Gresham. I'd never had that happen before. I've had somebody steal stuff. I've had a naked person do a photo shoot next to me that made me very uncomfortable. These are normal things happening everywhere. People having drug addiction issues in public. We cannot wait on these perfect solutions. And so I say, do not let perfection be the enemy of good. As chair, I would not let that happen. And I encourage my candidates running against me, if they end up being chair, please do not let perfection be the enemy of good. We cannot wait any longer for solutions, not a day longer. We have to do something now. And I would do that. So please vote for me. If you're tired of the status quo, I'm the only viable non-politician, non-commissioner running. My candidates running against me have been in power for over 5 years each. And if you're okay with the status quo, vote for one of them. But if you want something different, vote for me and go to votemayfield.com to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you so much. It's clear that the systems and approaches that we've been using aren't happening quickly or broadly enough. We need a bold and innovative leader with a proven track record of not just making good policy, but someone who has a track record of actually implementing those policies successfully. I know how to do that. I also know that you don't stay in business for 30 years without being able to execute your strategy and your vision. And that is what I have done as a small business owner. These organizational skills are the foundation that I have built real solutions on, like removing land use barriers that have resulted in nearly 334 units of affordable housing, bringing together a nonprofit and private company to provide housing for homeless individuals, securing funding from the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office HOPE team to do homeless outreach and connect people to housing and services. I received a $100,000 grant from the Gates Foundation to work on economic recovery and build a resilience hub pilot. I've cleared obstacles that resulted in a student-based healthcare center at Reynolds High School, co-sponsored the Construction Diversity Equity Fund for pre-apprenticeships and workforce support for communities of color and women. And I'm leading the redevelopment of 90 acres of county-owned property that will be redeveloped into housing, a workforce center, and green space. I also secured funding for the East County Food Bank and worked to bring over $40 million of investments to address houselessness. And while we're going through some really incredibly difficult times, I am hopeful because I know that in my bones that I can do this work and I can do it well. My lived experience and my ability to, most of all, my political will can and will win the day. I want to thank you so much for this opportunity to share with you my passion and my vision for Multnomah County. To learn more, you can go to votelori.com.
Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Thank you to everyone. I know I can just tell the heart.
Don't forget Commissioner Meieran.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hold on, we got one more. We're almost there.
So sorry.
So close.
Really sorry. I'm embarrassed.
So close. It's okay. Thank you. So I would just say we are facing a confluence of crises in behavioral health, in homelessness, in public safety, and public health. And we need someone who knows those issues inside and out, who has worked in them and who has worked in crisis and triage. That is me. We also need someone who knows the county systems and where the holdups are, who has sat in those meetings time after time and seen where we just talk and the action doesn't happen, where we can intervene in the systems. And that's me. Many of my fellow commissioners who I love and work with and I'm aligned with, and Sharia, mention as potential solutions things that we are already doing or things we've already tried or that the community has tried and or failed. we need someone who has been there all along, who gets those core systems and the issues facing us. And the expertise matters, the working in the systems and the intersectionality matters, and we need to get stuff done. So I just would say my issues are the county's issues. My work as a public servant is the county's work. I'm the only one who has proposed specific plans. I'm the only sitting commission who has challenged the status quo. And I am someone who will push my priorities for the change that we all need to see in our communities now. I encourage you to reach out to me, votesharon.com, Sharon@votesharon.com, and ask additional questions, because we need to talk about this, and we need to move forward together. So thank you everyone for being here and for the time tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Meieran. And again, I apologize for, really sorry about that. I do want to thank you, all the candidates, for coming tonight, because I know that this is so much work that you guys are putting into, and I can tell the care that each of you have for our community and for moving forward in a positive direction. And I think we all have difficult decisions to make and a lot of thinking to do. I want to remind everyone that this has been recorded and that will be posted. The recording will be posted on the Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association website and later this week. So you can go there and share the recording to friends and community members who weren't able to be here tonight. And also the written answers to all of the questions that the committee had submitted to the candidates will also be posted on the website later this week. Your ballots will be mailed on April 27th. So please be looking in your mailbox for those, and remember to get those back as soon as you can. Election date is May 17th. And because everyone on this forum I know is committed to promoting our democracy, please reach out to your neighbors and to your friends and to everyone you know in our community and encourage them to exercise their right and to vote. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
And can we just have a silent shout out for Carrie, who did so much work on this and facilitated and was really the mastermind behind this. So we got to make sure we give her the credit that's due. So thanks, Carrie. You're amazing.
Thanks, Chelsea. All right, well, have a good evening, everyone. Take care.